Okay, because it hadn't told me.
All right, and we are live. Attendees are beginning to roll in.
Awesome. Welcome, welcome, everybody. We'll start in a couple of minutes while people are joining us. In the meantime, as you join us, if you can share in the chat where you're joining us from, that would be awesome. Welcome, Elsie. Welcome, Carrie. Thank you. From Colorado, from North Boston, welcome. We'll give it a couple more minutes as people keep joining in. All the way from Houston. Thank you for joining. I love this. This is something that I think is the beauty of doing events online.
Mm-hmm.
From Brooklyn, hello, Hannah. Hello, Andrea. Welcome. We'll give it 30 more seconds and then we'll get started because we have a really packed agenda today for this event and we want to make sure that we get through everything because it's going to be a lot of information. Okay, so let's get started with while people continue to join us. Good evening, everyone. I'm Ileana Rojas. I'm the Chief Development Officer for ALPFA's Boston chapter, and it is an honor to welcome you to the second of a three-part career development series, where we hope to share with you insightful and actionable tips, resources, information on how to navigate your job hunting journey, whether you're actively looking for your next role or you're just exploring what a new path could look like. Now, before I take you through our exciting agenda for today, I want to tell you a little bit about ALPFA. We are a national nonprofit organization that focuses on providing professional development workshops, career resources, and networking opportunities to our members in order to empower and develop Latino professionals as leaders of character for the nation in every sector of the global economy. So if you haven't joined us already, I invite you to do so today so you don't miss out on the rest of this series. We have another exciting part 3 in June, as well as the rest of the incredible events we have planned for the rest of the year. I also want to thank my team, Laura Regus and Carola Leiva, who are the leaders of Women of ALPFA, and who, in collaboration with our marketing team and our partners, Harvard University, Morgan Stanley, Pegasystems, Circle Strategies, and Pixai, have made today's event possible. Thank you all so much. Now, we're going to kick off our event with a panel of outstanding speakers, followed by a workshop with practical and actionable resources and strategies. And before that, I want to remind everybody that at the end of the session, we are going to raffle 5 incredible tickets. So I recommend that you stay, and we want to thank Pixai for providing those. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that we can see our panelists. And now I lost their bios. Okay, here we are. So without further ado, let me introduce you to our panelists today. Maria Mejia serves as the Human Resources Director in the Central Administration at Harvard University. She joined Harvard in 2007 and works alongside a team of HR directors and consultants, providing direct human resources consulting services to the 40+ departments comprising the university's central administration. Prior to Harvard, she has an outstanding career in human resources in several businesses and geographies. She holds a bachelor's in business administration from the Pontificia Universidad Católica Madre y Maestra from Dominican Republic, and a master's in industrial and labor relationships from Cornell University in Ithaca, New York. Maria, thank you so much for being with us today. Also joining us, and I've lost my bios again. Here it is. Also joining us is Renee Lamy, who's a senior VP in Morgan Stanley in the New England region, where she serves as part of the leadership team and helps drive regional strategic initiatives. Prior to Morgan Stanley, Renee spent 10 years at Bank of America, serving multiple leadership roles, and was named Pinnacle Diamonds Market Leader in 2019. She is native from Brazil, where she graduated from Federal University of Espírito Santo, Vitória, with a bachelor's in marketing and advertising, and earned her MBA from Hult International Business School in Boston. Thank you, Renee, so much for being with us today. And we have also joining us Jerome Silva. He is the Global Managing Director of Pega, with an extensive experience in leadership, growth strategy, business management, transformation, operations, and prior to Pega, he has held several leadership positions at IBM. He obtained his master's in finance from the Caen University in France and an MBA from the Coventry Business School in the UK. Thank you so much, Jerome, for being with us today also. And I'm so excited for this panel and acing the interview and getting to know your perspectives from your different point of views that I'm sure will help our audience here today. And I would like to start by asking all of you, starting with Renee, your perspective on what is the most important change that has happened as a result of COVID-19, and how has it impacted recruiting in your organization, both internally and externally? Renee.
Eliana, thank you so much for having me and Alpha Boston. I appreciate the invitation. So to answer your question, we've become better human beings in corporate America. And I can break that down in 2 parts, right? One, we developed a new skill set because of the pandemic, and that is, remote productivity. So when we think about what companies went through, we had to pretty quickly decide what we are going to do to stay productive while still caring for the safety of our employees and clients, right? That shift allowed us to really become really good at our job virtually, right? Something that it was unheard of in my industry, especially in wealth management 2 years ago. But also I believe that we became really great at collaborating with others and with each other, right? Everyone is in this together, and looking out for each other became paramount. So that's number one. Number two, we acquired a renewed focus on employee wellness. When you think about the pandemic, and it triggered the necessity for connection and for building communities around us, right? Everything that went through. And even if it's virtually for the moment, I think that we have built very strong communities within corporate America. Corporate leaders are more in tune with what employees' needs and personal struggles are, right? The uniqueness of their needs. And the most rewarding piece for me is I feel like everyone learned that it is okay to show vulnerability, right? Which is it's one of the most critical pillars of mental health. And the last part of the question, when it comes to recruiting, we had to adapt, we had to invest in new technology, right? The phone screening continues to be the same here at Morgan Stanley. And I went through that a few months ago, the whole process. But the in-person interviews, we had to move to a new platform, right? We had to do the Zoom video meeting. The benefit of interviewing virtually for me, specifically, I feel like at Morgan Stanley, internally and externally, it allows the firm to put more people in front of that candidate, right? And with me, for example, I met with 9 people, 9 executives. That was extremely valuable, I think, not only for myself, but for the firm, because it allowed both of us to understand and to be sure that it was the right fit for my career, myself, as well as the firm when you're thinking about like making an offer. So.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Jerome, how about you? What have you seen post-COVID?
Thank you. And hi, everybody, again. Listen, just to put things in context, yes, I've spent 20 years at IBM, and now I'm at Pega. So to give you an understanding of what we are, Pega is a company that leads with empathy, and it really breathes through the company's culture through and through. As a result, we've observed being physically distanced, but not socially distanced. We've seen a lot of that, but we don't believe in social distance. We believe in physical distance to preserve the health of the ones around us. But we purposely found new ways to stay connected to one another and to together really feel united in the challenges that we faced. While many companies have experienced furlough, headcount reduction, bankruptcy as a consequence of this pandemic, we at Pega decided to continue to invest and grow. So for instance, when I joined Pega, we were 5,200 employees worldwide. And now we are about 6,000. So in a time of extreme challenges, we've really stayed extremely purposeful and united to grow. So from a recruiting standpoint, remote interview has become the norm. It would have been avoided previously. We used to fly everyone to Boston, but as a result, we had to adapt, like exactly Renee said, we had to adapt the interview process to ensure an excellent candidate experience was maintained nonetheless of now being remote. We also adapted our onboarding process. And as I pointed out, we are counting about 800 new people who joined Pega remotely, with a full onboarding being remote and virtual. Now, COVID-19 is no longer a novelty to our daily routines. We are therefore mindful of video meetings fatigue, exactly to the point of wellness and focus on employees' mental health that Renee just mentioned. One must be comfortable and accepting to be on or off video as best it fits their home reality and needs. So the 2017 viral scoop of those kids interrupting the dads in the live BBC interview that went viral around the world, and you've seen so much people laughing about it, really would no longer be handled the same way today. We have seen a stronger integration and tolerance of work and life on full display.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Maria, how about you?
I have to say that a lot, I think regardless of the industry where we are, I think a lot of the changes and the impact that this pandemic has brought to organizations are very common. And the impact is long lasting. I think in many ways, I believe that this pandemic, trying to see the positive lights on things, right? I think this pandemic and the impact of it have pushed organizations actually to get faster. In a way, we had to kind of, all of us together, do a forced pilot of the direction that we're heading in terms of future of work. You know, a lot of organizations before COVID had started moving towards having much more flex workplaces, right? Flexible workplaces with flex work arrangements, with telecommuting, remote work, maybe compressed weeks, in order to provide for that work-life balance and accommodate for those individual needs that you were mentioning before, and preserve that individuality of the employees. And in a way, this COVID basically forced us to all be on Zoom like that, right? So the impact was fast. We had to be adaptable. We had to increase our sense of connection and of getting to know each other, actually in a much more personal way. I'm sure all of you have seen a cat or a dog or a kid in one of your Zooms. And that brings what Renee mentioned before, a level of humanity and of real, personal, you know, connections, which adds value to all the organizations. And I would say, just focusing on recruiting, it adds value to the candidate and to the organization to be able to really have a transparent lens when you're interviewing or where you're getting to know that organization. It's a two-way process, I always say, with recruiting. Internally, I think that for us, many organizations, Harvard was one of these, we went into hiring freeze. We didn't know what was coming, right? A lot of positions had to be placed on hold. We didn't know exactly time frame, et cetera. Well, we capitalized on that kind of downtime to look at processes, to start preparing for what was coming, adapt, like Jerome was saying, you know, had to adapt to a virtual world, from screening candidates to onboarding them, to how to do I-9s electronically, you know. So that was quick, and it was a big shift for both hiring managers, behind the scenes recruiters, coordinators, payroll, as well as for candidates. And externally, I think that candidates also had to adapt, and the interviewers, you know, we really place a focus on not jeopardizing or compromising the candidate experience. And so a big part of the in-person interview for a candidate, it's coming on site. It's feeling the energy, it's sensing the culture from what they see from their interaction. So we had to make sure that our virtual interviews would ensure that the candidate would get a sense, right, of what would they get if they were on site. Making sure that our managers, our hiring managers, our interviewers were able to describe the vibrancy, the energy, the culture that they would find if they were on site, and that they would still experience virtually.
Thank you so much. And you all talk about, you know, so many important points, but especially about the experience, right? Because that's something that is becoming challenging from a virtual perspective. So from your point of view, starting with Jerome, what is the most important action that a candidate now can think about and can take to create a connection from their side with an interviewer?
Yeah, and Yana, maybe allow me one essential action and perhaps three important reminders. The one action would be to be present. Be present. It is so easy to be distracted with all the things being interconnected. Being present in the moment, intentionally, quieting the inner voice, that will distract you or tell you, maybe you're not right for the job. Quiet this little inner voice and letting go of any other stress, being transparent and communicating if there's anything going in the way of being fully engaged are really essential for the experience to be positive for all the parties involved. If there's something that is going bad in your life at that moment, you have to take care of somebody, and you're not at the best for this interview, just be transparent, be vulnerable. So be present is really that one essential action. If I want to say three little reminders is one, body language, two, active listening, and three, authenticity. On body language, smile and hold eye contact. Look at the camera, not the screen. If you have video issues and only the audio is working, don't panic. It's okay. Either ask for a reschedule or go with the flow and keep your smile, because you will hear the smile even on the audio. Active listening. Pay attention to your audience and adjust accordingly. How many people keep blah blahing and not even pause and ask questions? So don't hesitate. Be an active listener and don't engage in a long-ended monologue. And so the last reminder, authenticity, be yourself. That's all I would say.
Thank you so much. So many great points. Thank you. Maria, how about you?
I echo everything Jerome said. I think authenticity is such an important action that the candidates should take. Never stop being yourself. You don't want to go into an organization. You don't want to pretend something you're not in an interview, and then go into that organization and be who you are and not be comfortable, right? So that's important. I would also add, being present, keep that eye contact. Don't be distracted. Like Jerome said, put aside everything. If it's a half hour, if it's an hour, make sure you are there for that hour and give it your best. I think one of the most important actions to create that connection with the interviewer is show interest in the organization, in the role. So a lot of candidates sometimes just go to the interview and they're going to ask me questions, so I'm just going to answer. Engage. Honestly, erase the word interview from your mind. Look at it as an opportunity to converse, to learn. You're going to let yourself be known, your background, your skills, the experience. Remember all the value that you can bring, but also take the opportunity to learn from that interview. Come prepared with relevant questions. So the active listening that Jerome was mentioning, it's essential. You want to engage. So if an interviewer is saying something and it allows for a follow-up questions from you to understand a little bit more or deeper something they're explaining, go for it. If the time allows, of course. You want to also be cognizant of time management, with your answers and how succinct you can be while still answering the question, but not taking half of the interview in just one answer.
Thank you. Great advice. Renee, how about you?
I can't top that, but I will say that the genuine curiosity that both Jerome and Maria mentioned are for me number one for sure. A couple other things that I will mention is preparation, right? There's nothing worse than sitting in front of somebody who you're interviewing, you're interested in bringing into your fold and having that person really not know anything about the company or, the group. And, you don't need to know details, right? There are a lot of information that are not readily available, but there's a lot of information there are. So make sure that you're prepared, that you're ready for that interview and show that you care and that you really research the company, the people that you're interviewing with, and so forth. And the last thing would be follow up. I can't stress this enough. Send a quick thank you note. An email will do, right? But really be genuine in that note as well. If there was something that you discussed with that person and something that it's important, that you found out about them or about the work there, about the group that the team that you're trying to join, mention that and, talk about how you can add value to that and so forth. But if nothing else, just say a quick thank you for interviewing me today. That goes a long way.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And you've all shared a couple of things, not only actions that the candidate interviewing need to keep in mind, but I want to ask you specifically, starting with Maria, what are some critical characteristics that you may be looking for when interviewing internal candidates or external candidates, whichever, that people have to keep in mind?
So I will go back to authenticity. I like a candidate that comes across as genuine, that it's talking with examples of tangible contributions, but that give me a sense of very legitimate and genuine, so that it's really important. Both for internal and external equally, I always want to know what's their why, meaning what's driving them, whether it is a promotion internally, or it's a complete shift in industries or even in careers. Why? What's your why? What drives you? What motivates you? That is so key to me. In a candidate. It's definitely a characteristic that I look forward to getting to know. There's many candidates at times that are applying. We see that in our internal pools sometimes, where candidates are targeting such a wide and broad variety of jobs. And it's very unclear what's their why. And so trying to understand, even before you go to the interview, what's your why? What drives you? What interests you in that? And along those lines, I mentioned this earlier, it's trying to understand not only why do I want that job, right? Like, why do I want that position? What's the value? In an interview, you try to sell it. What's the value I'm going to bring? Oh, I've done all of this. I have this experience. You can hire me. I'm going to be your best candidate, But equally important for the interviewer, it's to hear from the candidate. What's the value that you think you can gain from us, right? What's in it for you as the candidate, as the professional? Why are you choosing us? Are we going to be that next step? Are we a stepping stone for something bigger? How can you grow and learn with us? Like, portray that, show that, ask those questions, So those are definitely critical characteristics that I look in candidates when I'm having conversations with them.
Thank you. It's all great advice. Thank you so much. Jerome, how about you?
I think Maria covered a lot of land already, but I would say it's not just what one is capable of that matters, it's how one does it. And the culture of the company is important. And for instance, at Pega, we believe in the ideal team player, which is summarized by 3 virtues: being humble, being hungry, and being people smart. So if you want to understand a little bit more of those 3 virtues, I would invite the audience here to check out the book from Patrick Lencioni, for more insight. But I also have lived and worked on 4 continents and in the Pacific Islands. And therefore, all along my life, I think I have nurtured and developed a natural attraction for diverse background and experiences. So diversity is extremely important to me, as I've really experienced countless times the true power of an integrated, rich melting pot of talents. Lastly, maybe I'll offer, as with any interview, we'd look for signs of obvious preparation. And you've heard this as a pattern in the previous questions. So being really proactive with clarification and questions when something on the role or the expectation of the responsibilities are not fully understood, I think are important, because you don't want to commit to something and then find yourself in an environment that is not the right fit for you to win and for the organization to extract the best talent you have to offer.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Renee, how about you?
Those were great, definitely traits there that I must say it's on my list. The core motivation that Maria spoke about, right? Very, very important. Why Morgan Stanley? Why do you do what you do, right? And most importantly, why you? But I would say competence is one that is at the top of my list as well. And there are many ways that people can demonstrate that, right? I usually ask people to talk to me about the metrics that they use to measure how they are being successful. Right? What are they proud about from their previous job and that they did in their previous employer? What are some failures and the lessons that they took from those failures that they now apply to their job? It's easy to put things on paper and have a great resume. It is important to know how to demonstrate your competence, right? I'll share one more. Intellectual curiosity. I think it's extremely important, right? That really being resourceful, really understanding that sometimes things will not really come to you. What do you do then, right? Taking ownership of your not only job, but the work that you do in your career, and making sure that you're resourceful, that you're intellectual curious, that you're looking for the answers, that you're going out there and asking people and really finding solutions for, the problems that we have on a day-to-day basis. So.
Thank you so much. You've all shared so many powerful pieces of advice. We're coming to the end of this panel before we jump into the workshop, but I would love to hear quickly, just like a speed round of your last pieces of advice for our audience, starting with Jerome.
Think, prepare, rehearse. Display who you are and not who you think the company wants to see, or the future of that culture fit may not be there. Do your due diligence to create curiosity, ask genuine questions, important detail, stage and test your background and lighting, camera, so that you project at your best and you can command exactly what you want to deliver. So that great first impression will be playing for you. And you know what? Life is short, so have fun.
Thank you. Thank you. Renee, how about you?
Well, my best advice is bring your whole self to the interview, right? Be professional, be prepared, right? Highlight your competence, but be highly prepared with common questions, so forth. But let your personality shine, right? The technical skills and adding value to the bottom line nowadays is no longer the only requirement. Companies want people who are influencers, right? Who are change makers, collaborators. In addition, remember that an interview is a two-way street. So do your homework on the culture of the company that you're interviewing with. Make sure to pick the one that will not just tolerate your difference, your uniqueness, right? But that they will celebrate you for who you are. It's important because once you take that plunge, then you're committed, right? You need to make sure that you're going into a team in a company that will value and your differences as critical to the overall success of the team.
Thank you, Maria.
I echo a lot of what Renee and Jerome said already. I agree with assessing whether that organization is the right place for you. You know, do your homework, do your research, understand what the organization's, where it's been, where it's headed, and have relevant questions to help you understand whether that is the right next step for you and the right place for you. In addition to what's been said already, I would say, do not underestimate the power of learning in an interview, you know, and staying connected. You might not get the job, but you can truly learn something that will prepare you for the next interview where you will get that job. So I know it's discouraging at times, but take it as a learning opportunity and do not miss out on staying connecting. The power of networking, it's huge. So stay connected with that interviewer. If you really felt a strong chemistry connection with one of the hiring managers that interviewed you, hey, send those notes like Renee mentioned before to say thank you, but stay connected because you never know when they can actually say, oh, I just met a candidate last week. Let me pass them along. They were amazing. So just those two last things. Never really give up. Just keep pushing through. You have a lot to offer, and the right place and the right position will come along.
Thank you, Jerome. Thank you, Renee. Thank you, Maria, for being with us today. You've definitely shared in a very short time such powerful gems for our audience today, both here and also on our Facebook Live. So thank you so much. We appreciate your time. And now we'll pass it on to our next speakers who will be sharing with us a workshop on how to ace the interview and share a lot of additional valuable insights and strategies. So Clifford Watkin and Natalie Spiro, the floor is all yours, and I'm going to be sharing the screen.
Thank you so much, Ileana. So everybody, welcome. It's so great to be with you on this Zoom webinar. As Ileana said, it's our second part of the career development series, and it's about acing the interview or interviewing in the new normal. So first off, I want to also say thank you to those panelists, Maria, Jerome, Renee, really insightful comments. Thank you so much. So if we could just move on, I want to just introduce myself. My name is Natalie Spiro. I want to introduce all of our presenters today. I'm with Circle Strategies. I'm the leadership training and D&I consultant for Circle Strategies. We have Cliff Watkin, who is our CEO and Chief People Officer from Circle Strategies. We then also have from Pixai, welcome Angela Edwards, who's the COO and co-founder of Pixai, and Chris Yang, who is Pixai's head of growth. So welcome to all the presenters. On the next slide, I'd love to take you through what we're going to actually address and achieve today and what we're hoping to kind of have as an outcome for today. First off, why is it really important to create that connection with people rather than just pushing and selling your brand? Secondly, we want to explore how to really crush this new normal virtual interview, right? With a really concise, clear elevator pitch, answering the interview questions that are on point and having a real winning setup. And finally, we also want to take you through some learning around what kinds of questions to ask so that you really understand the work environment that you're entering, the culture that you're stepping into in that work environment, and also what remote work typically looks like. So our agenda for today on the next slide, we are looking at 4 different elements today. The first is how we prepare for this interview. The second is, how do you really research the company that you're interviewing with, and also their particular interviewing team? Get to really know the characters and who's at the table. The third part is looking at all the different types of interviews that are out there, as well as kind of getting some insights into the stages of an interview. And then finally, in our last segment, we're going to look at giving you some tips and real strategies for success in interviewing. So coming up on the screen, there will be a Menti, we're doing a Mentimeter, and I don't know how many of you have used Mentimeter before, but you will have, if you kind of, it's going to be up right on your screen. If you use that code and you go to www.menti.com and you put in that code, there will be a question there which says, please place one word that describes your experience and your feelings in preparing for an interview. So think back to a time, it could be before now, it could be now, that you're preparing for an interview. And what is that one word that describes your experience? And we will wait for some responses to come up.
So many of you have had different experiences when you're preparing for an interview. And what we want to hear is, what was it like getting ready? What were you feeling? What were your emotions? What was running through your mind?
Great. So stressed out. A lot of people feel anxiety, worry, nervous, but full of hope and promise, because there's an anticipation of a new career and a new chapter, some fear, thinking about things strategically. We've got stressed again, nerve-wracking. So we see that there is some, there's some positive things, of course, being hopeful, but there's also some negative feelings, maybe a little bit of uncertainty.
Definitely, definitely.
On the chat, we're also seeing anxious and motivated.
Beautiful. So excited, motivated. Awesome. So hopefully today, by presenting what we're presenting, we'll be able to kind of really address some of these feelings, so that maybe there's a little shift in feeling and in preparing your interview. And on that note, to take us through preparing for an interview, which is our part 1, I want to pass over to Cliff Watkin.
Thank you, Nat. When we think about preparing for the interview, and we think about all of that anxiety and that stress that comes to mind, the best way to address that is to have a strategy. And what we want to leave you with today is how you can create your strategy for acing that interview. So firstly, please grab a piece of paper and a pen. You're going to need it in the next couple of slides as we do an exercise to help you create your strategy. When we talk about a strategy, we mean we're not talking about the strategy on how to sell yourself to the organization. We're not talking about how you're going to build a resume or answer questions that are going to get the interviewer to move you to the next level. We're talking about creating a rapport with the interviewer and strategies on how to do that. And we're talking about creating a conversation, not being stressed out, not being formal, making sure that you're able to engage with the interviewer for how you're answering those questions. And the key component to creating your strategy that we feel is a way to get success is to start with the end in mind. And when we talk about the end in mind, we are suggesting that when you go for that interview, there should be one thing that you are focusing on that the interviewer is going to leave after you're done with an understanding of what that end in mind is. So we've listed a few here for you to consider. Now, your end in mind could be very different based on the job that you're applying for. But in this case, these are some general ones so that you can wrap your head around it. The first one, he, she, they are hardworking. So the idea here is as you're going through your interview, you're answering questions and the interviewer is understanding that you are hardworking. They liked you. They think that you're sharp and that you asked good questions. They thought that you would be a good addition to the organization, or you're qualified, or you have the right education and certifications, or you're energetic and you're enthusiastic. The key here in understanding what the end in mind means is that by the end of the interview, whatever your end in mind is, you have left the interviewer with an understanding of what your end in mind is. So if we could flip to the next slide, we can talk a little bit more about what that means. When we think about preparing for the interview, on the screen are the standard questions that the interviewer is going to ask. Tell me about yourself. Why are you interested in this job? What are your strengths and weaknesses? Why did you leave your last employer? How would you praise a coworker for a job well done? When you give me an example of when you took initiative and you were a leader. These are general questions that the majority of interviewers are going to ask. But what we're suggesting is that you come up with a question an understanding of what the interviewer is going to leave the interview with. And I chose from the slide before that they're going to leave the interview with feeling that you are qualified for the job. That is your end goal in mind. And then when you get to these questions that the interviewer is asking you, you tailor your answers to that end in mind, or that you were qualified. So to give you an example, if we take the question on the screen right here that says, why did you leave your last employer? I can give you an example of something that happened, and this might have happened to you, but you're going to turn it around and use it to your advantage as to the interviewer understanding that you were qualified. So if I was being asked this question, why did you leave your last employer? I'd respond with, because I was qualified for the position and my employer didn't take advantage of my qualifications. Let me give you an example of what they overlooked. So when I was in college, I'd majored in creative arts. In my current role as a project manager in my current position, they needed to develop a marketing piece for the project we were working on. And the company chose to give the work to the advertising firm that they use to do all of their advertising. And what ended up coming back was an average job on the marketing piece. So I asked my manager after, is that something I could have done? Was it something that needed to go to the marketing agency? And she said that, no, if this is something that you know how to do, I would have been happy to give it to you. And I said, well, yes, I do have these skills. I majored in arts. I had an arts design major in college. And so what she said was, oh, I didn't know that. Now, the problem with this situation was that I've been with the company for 3 years, and she hired me for the position, and she overlooked this important skill that I have, and she didn't take the time in these past 3 years to learn this about me. And so I could have offered something to the organization, and there have been a couple of other examples of where this has happened, but I was overlooked. So here in this example is, I want them to know that I'm very qualified. I want the interviewer to know that I'm really qualified, and that I'm using a real tangible example to get the message across to them And my mission in my interview is to let them know that I have additional experiences that I could bring to the company. This is an example of how you use the end goal in mind. And so I'd like everyone to just take a couple minutes to run through this exercise for yourself, so you can feel it and actually understand how it shifts the way you present yourself in an interview. So if everybody could grab your piece of paper and your pen, and we're going to use the questions that I used. So we're going to focus on our end goal. And our end goal is that when you leave that interview, you want them to know that you're qualified. And they're now asking you this question: why did you leave your last employer? So I'd like you all to take a couple minutes, think about what you would want to say to show your qualifications. This might have happened to you already in a situation with an employer. And in the chat, write down why you left and what is your mission to overcome that in your interview. What do you want to get accomplished, and how are you going to say it? So if everybody could take a couple minutes, do that in the chat, and we can share and see what other people are saying. So the idea is to think about what your end goal is, and our end goal in this example is that we want our employer who's interviewing, our prospective employer who's interviewing us, to know that I'm qualified. So in the chat, write down, why are you leaving your last employer? Could just be a couple sentences. And what is it that you want them to understand about you and how you can turn that around? I see everybody's thinking really hard. Okay, so maybe not some thoughts around this came so easily. So somebody had written, thank you, that you were looking for an opportunity to be a business partner, and you want to be part of a strategic plan and see the growth of those plans. So this is your mission. And so if this is your mission, then when you go through the interview and there's opportunities for you to respond to questions where you can show that you have been a business partner, or where you can participate in strategic plans, this is your chance. And the goal of this exercise is to stay focused on what your objective is. What is your end goal? And not be distracted with other types of things that you might want to inject into the conversation. Because when the interviewer leaves, they're going to leave with what you wanted them to hear about you. Great, thank you for providing that example. All right, moving on to the next slide. We felt it would be important to provide everybody some good tips on how to make sure you can win that interview. And these are standard, they've been around for a long time, but we have a couple extra that we want to share with you that could be helpful. So when you're speaking, there is nothing wrong with taking a moment to collect your thoughts. And it's okay to say to the interviewer, hey, I just need to think about this for a minute. Give me a minute as you collect your thoughts. They're not going to judge you for giving a little break in the space in the conversation if it's a tough question. That's really, really okay. Keeping your answers brief, 1 minute or less, that's really important, because you're talking to a manager who's taking time out of their day to interview you, and we want to make sure the answers are concise and brief. And the best way to do this is to practice and rehearse aloud with a timer, so you can see how long your answers are going to be and try to keep them within a minute. Always use examples, and if you need to practice with those examples, role play with a friend. Or if you don't feel comfortable doing that, the toughest thing that you're ever going to do is stand in front of a mirror and interview with the mirror. And no one's going to know, and the mirror's not going to laugh, but at least you'll be able to see how you're coming across and be able to make some adjustments. And now with the technology that we have, recording your role play and evaluating yourself is a great way to do that. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in the presentation, where PIXI is going to show us some tools that they use to help with recording your interviewing. All right, if we could move to the next slide, that would be great. Here are some more tips that I think are important for folks to understand. Prepare to ask your first question after answering the first or second question in the interview. So a lot of times the interviewer waits till the end and says, do you have any questions for me? And if you are ready with your first question after the first or the second question that the interviewer asks you, it says to the interviewer that you're engaged, you're present, that you know what you want to get out of this interview, and that's perfectly acceptable, as well as changing the dynamic of the interview in that it becomes more of a conversation. And when you ask questions, you're also showing a lot of interest. You're also showing that you've researched the company and you want to get to know them a lot better and understand what the organization culture is like, what the organization is doing from a direction and a strategic focus. Sometimes you have to manage through an interrogation style interview. And there's some tricks that you can do to turn that interrogation style into a discussion. The interrogation style is the fault of the interviewer. They might not have a lot of great experience interviewing. They've written down a bunch of questions and they're just going to continue to ask you the question after question after question. And when you start to feel that there is this going on in the interview, the simplest thing to do is to just say, do you mind if I ask you a quick question? In between the questions that they're asking you. And that creates a break. The interviewer will say, yeah, sure, what did you want to ask? And then you ask something very general, like you might see a poster, a picture on the wall of a sports team that you're connected with or that they might seem to like. And you feel comfortable starting the general conversation about that. Or you might see a picture of the interviewer having a dog or a family or something like that. Ask something simple and easy about that, which then starts to change the dynamic of the interview, and turns it more into a conversation and a discussion. And then you can move back to the specific questions that they have. You want to also focus on the questions, focus your questions on the job and find out specifically what the duties are going to be. Even if you've been given a job description, take this opportunity to pull certain things out of the job description and ask more questions about it, because that will also create a discussion. And then also, after answering a question, ask how they would have handled it, because that shows that you're not only responding to them, but you're also engaged in what they think as the manager and how they would have responded. And it could be the same as what you responded, or it could be different. So these are some interviewing tips that we thought would be helpful to share with folks in understanding how to navigate and ace the interview. We also have some handouts that we're going to share with everybody after the presentation that are a little bit more deeper and more specific. We're going to give you a series of questions that you can ask the interviewer. So instead of you coming up with them on your own, we're going to give you a handful of those to help you prepare. And I think that will help navigate the interview a little bit easier for you. And then we're also going to provide you some feedback, some help with how to do body language, how to do nonverbal communication, that kind of thing. And I think that will be very helpful. So I'm going to pass the slide presentation over to Natalie, and we're going to move to the next segment.
So everybody, if you're sitting down, just push your chairs out and just get up off your chairs. And we're just going to do a little shakeout here because you have been sitting for about 60 minutes now. And movement has been shown to be really, really important to kind of help your left-right brain thinking, to focus your brain, because brains tend to switch off. The adult brain, they've done lots of research on it, and tends to switch off after 20 minutes. So this is good for blood flow, and it's a wellness and kind of self-care element, because when you're doing all this preparation for interviewing and on your screen 24/7 and that fatigue is happening, it's good to move around a bit. So just get out of your chairs, and really quickly, we're just going to shake our right hand out. We're going to shake our left hand out. We're going to shake our right foot out, and we're going to shake our left foot out. Just give a full body shake. All right, and we can get back into our chairs now. Blood's flowing. We're in good focus. All right, I wanted to hand over again to you, Cliff, to do part 2 of our workshop agenda, which is really researching the company and the interviewing team.
Sure. I'm just looking at the clock, and we just want to be mindful of time and make sure we finish on time. This part of the presentation focuses on researching the company, and that is critical. The panelists talked all about it, so I'm going to go a little bit quickly through it. The slides are very, very informative in terms of what you need to do about research and why it is very, very important. Most importantly, there's a lot of information today that companies provide you without you asking for it, and it's mostly on their website. Good places to find information about the company and what they're doing is in the news section, and read all of the news postings that they have provided, because it tells you what upcoming products are being launched. It tells you new locations that they might be opening, or it tells you about some award they won, which you can then turn around and ask questions about in your interview. So it's important to understand what is going on in the organization operationally and from a business perspective, but also you can learn a lot about the culture in the organization. They can provide you newsletter articles on some things they did in the community, or things that they did in the office when we were all in the office, or things that they did remotely via Zoom. So there is a lot of information that you can gather about the organization on their website, and through just Googling it and finding out articles. And then LinkedIn is also a great place for you to find out information about the organization. And the 2 things you're trying to get is what's happening in the business and what's the culture like. So with that, I want to pass the presentation over to Chris, so we can get a good sense of how the interview process works and what's a good way to help you practice for your video interview.
Hey, thanks, Cliff, so much. Yeah, so step number 2, we really wanted to talk about that advanced research is key to preparation. So we really want to know certain topics, right, that you may want to bring up. And so, or that you may not necessarily want to bring up inside of an interview, but know beforehand before going in. And so some of these questions are like, has the company recently gone through a series of layoffs? Or have the business unit you're interested in been consolidated recently? Are they replacing an incumbent that is currently in their role? And a lot of these sorts of questions you might not be able to get within an interview, but you could find online either through simply Googling or actually through networking. So when you network, it's always a great idea. And I think Maria actually touched on this concept earlier during the panelist discussion, the tail end of it, that it's a good idea to go and do informational interviews. And so I would suggest going to do that just so that you can get as much detailed information as possible. When you have this sort of information, you're able to present them within an interview. It'll make you look really good because it looks like you were proactive and took the initiative to go and get that information yourself. Yep. Next slide, please. So yes, this is exactly what we are also talking about, right? So learn this information so that you could use it to your advantage. Another couple areas that you may want to highlight and that you can find, especially on LinkedIn, are any sorts of connections that you have outside of a professional setting, right? So whether you guys went to the same university or you have similar hobbies or are within the same interest groups, these are all things that you can find on LinkedIn sometimes, or even on Facebook or social media. Although it might be awkward to bring up like, hey, like I saw you play tennis on Facebook, right? Don't want to do that. You could actually introduce these sorts of questions and like really connect with your interviewer when you're doing the interview itself. So I would recommend just, if you can, if there's room for a little bit of small talk, especially at the beginning, really connect with them on a human-to-human level. And that will really help you become more than just a job candidate. It's going to also show that you are you, right? You are uniquely you and genuinely you. So that's it for me. Thanks, Cliff. Next slide, please. I think, Cliff, it's back over to you now.
So at this part of the presentation, we are going to talk about how to prepare for the interview. And PIXI has developed a tool that allows us to video ourselves while we're preparing for the interview and get feedback on that. There are a lot of different types of ways to have an interview. We have phone, we have in person, which we're doing very little of right now. There's one-on-one in person, there's panel in person. But I think with the shift in the way employers are using video to interview candidates, it's become an opportunity for organizations to streamline their recruiting process and interview process. Like we heard earlier from the panelists, that you can get more folks in front of a candidate and get feedback a lot faster and more effectively and more cost effectively. And so PIXI offers has developed this tool that allows candidates to go through the process of preparing for an interview, and specifically for the type of job that they're applying for. There's a whole series of job families that are built into the platform. And when you choose your job that you're applying for, the interview that it takes you through is geared toward that job specifically. So the questions that they're asking you are geared toward that specifically. So I'm going to now turn it over to PIXI, who is going to take us through what that all means and understand how their platform works.
Thanks, Cliff. Could everyone see me? Can you see me, Cliff? I'm not quite sure this is working.
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. So some of you may have been exposed to at least one type of these kinds of interviews, but out of all the types of interviews that Cliff just mentioned, the use of video interviewing has exploded. This is mostly due to the remote nature that the panelists were talking about today. So two-way video interviews are much easier for job seekers because it's very similar to a face-to-face interaction. However, asynchronous video interviewing offers new challenges for job seekers, and this is because it's just a one-way conversation. So just to give you a quick definition, asynchronous video interviewing is when the employer uses a platform that effectively performs as an intermediary for the recruiter. So instead of the recruiter asking you interviewing questions, the platform presents those questions to the job seeker, and then they record him or herself giving the answer. So you're not necessarily talking to anyone, it's just you being recorded. So as you can imagine, on the employer and on the recruiter side, this saves them a ton of time and money, and this is why it's being adopted so quickly. So using one-way video interviews is a trending mechanism to substitute for phone screens. So watch out for them. And so with this said, I'd like to offer you some tips and key insights to help you rock your next video interview. Next slide, Eliana, please. So first, let's break down the components of a successful setup. Number one, to begin, it is super important to keep light in front of you. This will help highlight your eyes, your facial movements. That's super important for that nonverbal communication that the panelists were talking about today. Number two, your eyes should be looking directly at the camera. And in order for you to do that, you have to raise the camera to your eye level. This step is key to simulating that face-to-face connection with the recruiter on the other side. Three, this part reinforces the previous point. So effectively, imagine you're talking to a person in front of you, and imagine what happens if they're looking down or if they're looking at their screens instead of you. The underlying signal here is disinterest or distraction, and that is not the impression you want to give. So 67% of hiring managers say that failure to make eye contact is a common nonverbal mistake. 4, your background should not be a distraction. It should be as muted as possible so that the recruiter doesn't get distracted away from you. Also, a word of caution with the virtual backgrounds, and also to slip in a little bit of psychology here. So when we meet strangers, anyone, humans, the brain automatically looks for clues to determine if the stranger is either a friend or a foe. This is left over from caveman days and evolution, and it is part of our flight or fight portion of our reptilian section of our brain. So how do we do this? Well, we survey our environment, we survey the stranger's body language, we survey their clothes, their accessory. So these are all information that our brain is gathering. And so what happens with virtual backgrounds is that our brains work extra hard to figure out what's behind this veil. Are they hiding something? So you want to immediately show that you are a friend to the recruiter's brain by being as transparent as possible with your surroundings. So we're going to skip over number 5 because I want to continue on this talk about, psychology. So our hands are very important in helping others to determine friend or foe. There was a study done on TEDx presenters, and the highest ranked talks had over 400 hand gestures. So the lowest ranked presentations had only about 200 hand gestures, so about half. This signals that our brains really need to see others' hands to help us feel comfortable. So make sure you're showing some hand movements while delivering your interview. Nonverbal cues are super important in determining whether a job candidate gets called in or not. And this is why over 33% of hiring managers know within the first 90 seconds of an interview whether they're going to hire someone or not. Okay. Back to number 5, dress to impress. On video, make sure you're not using flashy patterns or colors that are too bright, or they either blend with your background. Stick to neutral colors and be safe. Number 7, by your desk, have pen, paper, and some water to clear up your throat. And lastly, make sure that you check all of your tech prior to that video interview. Ideally, a good quality camera, perhaps some headsets will deliver the best visual and audio. However, it is okay if you don't have these upgrades. Just make sure that your tech is working well and that you prop up that camera with whatever it is that you have so that you can make that one-to-one connection with the camera. And if you're using a cell phone, make sure that it's in landscape mode so that they get that cinematic view. So let's go to the video, Eliana, please. All right, so they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. Let's take a look at what happens when we don't take these tips. In this scenario, Eliana, can you rewind it a little bit? I'm sorry. Yeah, from the beginning, thank you. So first, it's not a good idea to video interview on your bed, on the couch, or on a coffee shop. Find a quiet, confined space where you can execute confidently. And in the second shot, yes, thank you, Eliana. And in the second shot, this is what it actually looks like when you have the light coming from behind you. They can't see your nonverbal cues. Very confusing for the recruiter. So this shot, this is what the recruiter sees when the camera is actually pointing up, your nostrils. You don't want that at all. And also her background is very distracting. So in this shot, we have 3 different shots here. The camera is angling from above, from below, and on the right, you see the perfect shot. That is exactly where you want to head up. And in this section, we're going to finalize the nonverbal tips. So something to know, can you pause here, Eliana, please? Thank you. Something to know is that scientific research has proven that our brains mimic the emotions that we see in others. So what is this man feeling, guys? Is it fear? Is it shock? Okay, let's say it's fear. What happens right now is that in your brains, you're activating the fear portions of your brain, just simply by looking at this gentleman and his reaction. So the things that's important in this scenario and how that ties into your job interview is because you want to make sure that the message that you're conveying has the right feeling behind the content. So that feeling that we convey, whether we realize it or not, happens. And you want to make sure that you're relaying the right feeling with your communication skills. Okay, Eliana, thanks. Can we continue? So there are these ladies coming up. Tell me what you think about them right now. And as they progress, does your opinion change about what they maybe are like as people? So it's very simple. Now you can understand how some hiring decisions are made within minutes. Lastly are these energy levels. The camera does not convey your energy levels very well at all. So you have to figure out a way that you present yourself in a manner that will trigger the pleasant area of the recruiter's brain by coming across as friendly and confident. So the way you achieve this is by practicing. Next slide, Eliana, please. So to nail your nonverbal cues, you need to practice via mock interviews. If you need help practicing, you can use the PixSci platform. You can sign up for a free account to practice via our mock video interviewing tool. And should you need extra support, we can offer that as well. We have professional reviews that you can take advantage of. And today we are raffling 5+ accounts, $50 value on the PixSci platform, where you will have the ability to get your resume and or your mock video interview professionally reviewed. So stay tuned to the end for that, guys. Thank you. Cliff?
So everybody, just another kind of wonderful tool that helps you ground during all this interviewing and this preparation for interviews and research, especially before you go into an interview, is such a simple tool. It's just using your breath. So everybody together, just take a really deep breath in through your nostrils for the count of 4. Hold it for 4. And exhale for 6. That should make you feel really centered. All right, Cliff, I'm going to pass to you for the next section. And you're on mute, Cliff.
So for actually this one, I'll be talking about how networking is your secret weapon, right? So we wanted to really focus on this last section, interview tips for success. And when I actually was brought that topic to talk about, it really made me think, okay, what tip is there that could get you that interview in the first place? And I think this has been a constant theme through the panelist discussion and then throughout this workshop, is that networking is actually really key. And so let's take a step back and actually define what networking is. The dictionary defines it as literally the action or process of interacting with others to exchange information and develop professional or social contacts. In essence, basically what it is relationship building. So networking can help you bring to the interview stage, and it can help you stand out from other job candidates. When you boil it down, there are only really two ways to network. So the first is actually using your pre-existing network. If you know someone at the company you're interested in, great, you got that solved. If not, don't be afraid to use your personal networks. So that still counts as your pre-existing network. Utilize your second and third degree connection. It's okay to be the friend of a friend that wants to do an informational interview with an individual at the company that you are applying to. So pro tip, if you are going to do this friend of a friend approach, rather than asking to simply be referred, write out an email that can either be copied and pasted or forwarded. Doing this will ensure that you get the contact information of the individual that you're trying to network with. This helps you control the flow of communication as much as possible. Now, the second way is if you don't have that pre-existing network for the job or industry that you're interested in, then the second option is simply create one, right? Reach out to the folks that have similar titles and job functions to the role or company that you are applying for. Putting yourself out there shows that you have the drive and initiative to succeed. A strategy to do this is looking at what jobs are available and then using LinkedIn to search those job titles. When you find a few people that match your job title, send them a little message like, hi, so-and-so. I'm interested in applying for an open position similar to yours at X company. Would you be willing to do a 15-minute informational interview with me? Would love to get your advice and perspective on what your role at X company is. And then, right away, list 3 potential times to meet in that message. Although most people you meet won't be able to give you a job right away, and if you straight up ask for a job, they probably won't respond. You probably get ghosted. Most people do love talking about themselves and giving advice. It feels, and the reason is because it feels good to help people. So utilize that to your advantage during the job hunt. Don't be discouraged if someone says no. Some people just don't want to help. All you have to do is find the ones that do, right? So now the next thing I'm going to share is often an overlooked layer of networking when it comes to job hunting. It's understanding that others are actually incentivized to bring you into their company. Many companies, more so if they're corporate, have placed incentives for their employees to refer others to open positions that need to be filled. These incentives could be monetary for the person referring you, or the incentive could be more social. It's more based on social psychology. Someone sending in a referral for an open position shows that the chances. So someone sending in an open referral for you shows that someone actually, that person has a good eye for people, right? And so if you end up going into the company and you do well at your job, it's a huge plus for the person who referred you. So at the end of the day, companies and recruiters want to have the best people join their organization. Networking to get referrals will make you stand out, as in the employer's mind, those who are referred are more likely to be a value add to the business. The concept of trust perception and trust building underlies the entire networking and referral process. The reason behind this is the logic that candidate referrals will more likely be someone that will do well in the role due to the human connection with someone at the company. Again, a referral is a show of trust. If you are referred, that speaks volumes. With recruiters having a plethora of sources for candidates, networking will make you stand out. Make yourself more than a resume that is being scanned through for keywords, though those keywords are still important. Just, make sure that hiring managers put a positive bookmark on your application. And one of those things can be, being referred. So actually, I wanted to share a statistic with you guys. Employee referrals have the highest applicant to hire conversion rate. Although only 7% of applicants are referrals, 40% of all hires come from the referral pool. So proper networking will increase your chances of success. So actually, as many of you guys are part of the ALPFA network and may have access to other personal and professional networks, I really urge you to utilize them. Take the amazing opportunity that you have to schedule 15-minute Zoom coffees with folks from ALPFA Boston. And if you're not in the ALPFA network, maybe consider joining. Whether you're looking to get a lead on an open job or you're looking to get more information about a company that you've already applied to, networking can and will help you if you utilize it the right way. So this last part is key. The people you network with will feel better about meeting you if you show a genuine desire to get to know them for who they are. People don't feel good if they feel like they're being used. So make sure that you take a posture of true relationship building. Networking doesn't stop after a meeting ends. It's a continuous process. Nobody will want to refer you if you don't first become their friend, right? And then the last major tip, and Maria really touched on this earlier during the tail end of the panel discussion, is that you please do send thank you notes to everyone. That is also a part of networking. It's a plus if it's handwritten, but nowadays, since most things are standardized through email, that's great. So whether it's the recruiter you're working with, your interviewer, or someone you had a networking meeting with, do make sure to thank them for their time and the opportunity to get to know them. So it'll actually leave a really strong lasting impression. So that's it from me. Thank you, everyone. Back to you, Cliff.
You're on mute.
Thank you, Chris. We're gonna just end the presentation here with some homework assignments for everyone. We've covered 5 major areas in the presentation, and I want to bring those to light for everyone as we end. First of all, planning a strategy. That's the most important, and we talked about coming up with an end goal and focusing with that end goal throughout your interview and how you answer your questions and how you prepare and practice for them. Also, it's very important to research the company so that you're prepared and you can ask questions that show you're engaged and you're interested in what the organization is doing. Thirdly, we want to make sure you come away from the interview understanding the process and the steps. And it's okay to ask as many times as you need to, what's the next step, or how is this interview process going to work? Practicing for the interview is also really key, and we've given you some tools and tips today on how to make sure you beef up your practicing. Number 4 is keeping your emotions in check. This is a really tough process to go through, whether you're interviewing for a job internally in an organization or whether you're interviewing for a job externally. And it's stressful, and use your resources and your family or your friends or your connections to help you manage that. Lastly, keep applying. This is a tough world out there. It's very competitive. It's a new world in terms of how you apply for jobs today and how you get connected and how you network and how you present yourself. And so just keep at it. It takes a long time, and with the best preparation and the strategy in hand, you should be able to be successful and land your next position. So with that, thank you very much for participating. I hope this workshop was informative and folks came away with some cool tips to leave with. I'm now going to pass the presentation over to Carola, who is going to end the presentation for us. The last message I want to leave is that if anybody's on the presentation who's an HR professional and needs to get continuing education credits for SHRM, you're able to get those through Circle Strategies for participating today. Thank you.
Thanks, Cliff. So my name is Carola Leiva, and I am the Associate Director of the Women of ALPFA Boston. First, I would like to thank our amazing panelists, Maria, Renee, and Jerome. Thank you so much for your insight about acing the interview process. I found it extremely helpful, and I hope our audience did as well. I am so excited to have had the opportunity once again to partner with Circle Strategies and Pixide to bring our ALPFA community the second installment of the Career Development Series. Thanks to this partnership, we're able to raffle access to Pixar Resume Builder and Expert Guidance. We have 5 winners today: Bernie Palacios, Kerry Anderson, Ingrid Morales, Marco Castillo, and Sofia Corcho. Please make sure to follow Alpha Boston in your social media accounts to stay up to date on our latest content and upcoming events. And please join us for the next installment of the Career Development Series, the Negotiation Workshop, happening on June 10. That concludes our event for this evening. Thank you once again for joining us, and have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you all for participating.
Thank you so much, and congratulations to all the winners. We'll contact you via email for next steps. Thank you. Have a great night.
Have a good evening.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye.